'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. Welcome, welcome, one and all, it's that time of year for some Christmas cheer and for everyone to be merry and murderous, because this week's review is Christmas Evil, a movie that blends the holiday season together with Taxi Driver and just a dash of slasher horror action. Released in 1980 and originally known as You Better Watch Out, which is objectively a brilliant name, then changed to Christmas Evil, a kind of meh name. It's also known as Terror in Toyland, which is an objectively awful name, whichever name you watch it under. It was written and directed by Lewis Jackson. Considered one of the better Christmas horror efforts, it is director John Waters' favourite holiday flick. So let's take a look at why that might be, starting with a brief look at the plot. It opened in 1947, where two young boys are waiting for the arrival of Santa to deliver their presents and eat the treats they've left for him with their mother. After this magical experience has ended, the younger of the two boys proclaims, "That's Dad, it's not Santa." To which Harry, the elder of the two sons, decries his younger brother as an idiot and goes to check out what's happening downstairs, where he sees Santa making out with his scantily clad mother. The twin discoveries that Santa isn't real and that his parents have sex is too much for the poor child's mind, and he instantly goes insane. Fast forward 33 years, and a fully grown Harry is a very weird but sweet man who seems to think he may well be Santa. He works in a toy factory and keeps a keen eye on all the neighbourhood children so he can make notes in his naughty or nice books. Yes, he seems to have multiple volumes of these, and admittedly, very strange but a seemingly harmless man that is until his colleagues at work take the mickey a little too strongly and he goes on an insane murder spree dressed as Saint Nick. I just have to mention here, this film has one of the most what the fuck did I just see endings of any film I've ever seen, which I won't spoil here for anyone who hasn't seen it. Just had to mention it though, because it is absolutely wild. The plot is at least pretty unique in these kinds of holiday horrors, in that our murderous antagonist is also our protagonist. And he isn't on some revenge-based killing spree. No, his motives are far more noble, which is something we will get to in the very next section of this review, where we cover the film's strengths. However, the plot does have one massive downside, which is it's probably not what people think it's going to be from reading the synopsis, which I'll cover later in more depth here when I get to the downsides of this flick. Suffice to say for now, this movie isn't a slasher film. It's a psychological character study of one man's descent into madness, which is its first potential plus point. Whether you are going to enjoy this film entirely hinges on if you enjoy Brandon McGat's performance, because Harry, the character he plays, is really the only one worth mentioning in the entire film. A man who embodies the very values that Christmas is supposed to represent, those of Christian charity, kindness and giving, in direct opposition to the modern selfish commercialization of it all. He's the holiday horror Travis Bickle, a righteous man on a path of destruction because everything is wrong in the world of Christmas and he needs to put it right. Which, much like Bickle, makes him a complex anti-hero rather than a straight-out villain. McGat's performance is sublime as a man on the edge of insanity. He really does portray a psychologically damaged, yet at heart pure man brilliantly here. One, as I say, who is fundamentally a complex character. He, in his mind, is trying to right the wrongs of Christmas and bring it back to the correct moral path. He of course does this by murdering people, but only ones that he believes represent the very worst of modern Christmas, its commercialization, exploitation and glorification of greed. The performance by McGat and the way the character is written do a fine job of making him, even once he's become a murderous psycho, a somewhat likeable and relatable character. This, of course, all fits perfectly into the themes of the film, which are its next strength. As I said previously, Harry treasures everything that people would traditionally recognize as being good about Christmas. He opposes what many people see as the commercialization and exploitation of the holidays Agreed. This creates an interesting duality as he attempts to enforce what we as the audience would see as the morally pure version of Christmas via violence. He also attempts to help the people left out as a result of the change in Christmas. The sick, the weak, and the poor. Another demographic of society pushed to the side are mentally ill people. Harry is clearly a very mentally ill man, something the film takes great pains to set up throughout the first 2 acts. One that society at large does a terrible job of dealing with. Entirely harmless if well cared for and medicated correctly, but here treated abysmally and with disdain by society at large, and sadly, in this case, even his family. All largely because Harry doesn't conform to societal norms and probably comes across as very naive, very childlike in his beliefs and behaviour, which makes him ripe for exploitation by those around him, much like the holiday he so adores. This leads to him having a total psychological break with reality, and he murders people as a result. Which is why this is far more of a fantastic character study than a traditional slasher movie. All of this is underpinned by the film's next strength: the low-budget aesthetic and style. A lot of low-budget horror from the early 80s can look like utter ass. Not this film. It looks pretty nice, having a bright and festive atmosphere thanks in no part to its use of lighting to give scenes an almost dreamlike aesthetic. Late into the piece, Harry stumbles through a neighbourhood and it looks almost like something you'd see in an 80s sci-fi, with harsh bright lights framing his path. Those lights in this instance, instead of being alien in nature, are in fact Christmas lights in the shape of reindeer. Then in the very next scene, Harry's chased by a torch-wielding mob reminiscent of the classic Frankenstein movies. Something that I suspect isn't by accident, as the director Lewis Jackson has said that this film is more akin to that movie than the slasher the script predates, whose success did, however, get the film greenlit. That, of course, being John Carpenter's Halloween. Which neatly brings me to the weaknesses. Because yes, I suspect a lot of people read this film synopsis and go into it expecting it to be a holiday slasher in the vein of Silent Night, Deadly Night, but instead find themselves watching a slow burn psychological character study set at Christmas, when not much really happens in terms of action and or horror. I think it takes more than 60 minutes for Harry to actually kill anyone, and the film only runs to 92 minutes as it is. There's only 2 killing scenes, in fact. If you don't buy into the character study and Brandon Magat's performance, I highly suspect that you'll find this a bit of a drag, spending 95% of the runtime following a weird middle-aged man with a Christmas fetish having a nervous breakdown. Added to this, when he does kill, the violence is fairly tame and the blood and gore all look very cheap. The blood's the wrong tone of red and it's way too thick and gloopy to be convincing. In other words, there isn't much on show for the bloodhounds in the audience either. What I'm trying to say is, this film's only real weakness is the fact it's often missold as something it isn't, a slasher, when in reality, it is a really good psychological character study. Christmas Evil has rightly gone on to be a cult holiday horror, not a traditional slasher and not even particularly scary, but definitely an interesting little character study of mental illness and the commercialization of Christmas. If you go into this expecting a gore-filled slasher, you're gonna be sorely disappointed. But if you want a dark Christmas retelling of Taxi Driver, then this is exactly the film for you. Thanks for watching, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, please like, comment and subscribe.